Cholera, the disease that made humanity fear water. Imagine an ordinary summer morning. People head to the marketplace, children play in the streets, and merchants open their shops. No one suspects that within just a few hours, the city will be consumed by panic. One after another, people begin complaining of severe stomach pain, vomiting, and relentless diarrhea. By evening, many can no longer get out of bed. By the following morning, some homes have already lost their owners forever. This is how many cholera outbreaks began, a disease that has claimed millions of lives over the last 2 centuries and permanently changed the course of human history. In this video, we'll explore where cholera came from, why it terrified entire civilizations, how it spread across the world with astonishing speed, and why, even today, this deadly disease has not disappeared completely. What is cholera? Cholera is an acute infectious disease caused by the bacterium Vibrio cholerae. It lives in water and enters the human body through contaminated drinking water or food. At first glance, that may not sound particularly frightening. But this bacterium has a devastating ability. Once it reaches the small intestine, it produces a powerful toxin that forces the body to release enormous amounts of water and essential salts. Within only a few hours, a person can lose more fluid than they normally would over several days. Without treatment, death can occur in less than 24 hours. For this reason, cholera was often called the Blue Death. Severe dehydration caused the skin to take on a bluish-gray appearance, the eyes became deeply sunken, the voice grew weak and almost inaudible, and the hands and feet turned cold. To people living centuries ago, it looked almost supernatural.
How long has cholera existed? Historians believe cholera has existed for thousands of years. Some researchers point to ancient Indian writings, more than 2,000 years old, that describe an illness remarkably similar to cholera. The disease appeared most frequently in the fertile delta of the Ganges and Brahmaputra rivers, where warm temperatures, dense populations, and abundant waterways created ideal conditions for the bacteria. For centuries, cholera remained largely confined to this region. But everything changed at the beginning of the 19th century. A smaller world, the early 1800s, marked a period of dramatic global change. European empires expanded rapidly across Asia, Africa, and the Americas. Merchant ships crossed the oceans every day, carrying soldiers, traders, and valuable goods between continents. It seemed like the dawn of a new era of commerce. But the ships carried more than tea, spices, and textiles. Hidden among their passengers traveled one of history's deadliest killers. Cholera had finally found a way to leave its ancient homeland. Humanity had no idea that the first truly global cholera pandemic was about to begin. Why was cholera so deadly? Today, most people who contract cholera can survive if they receive prompt treatment. 200 years ago, however, medicine knew almost nothing about bacteria. Many doctors believed diseases were caused by poisonous air, foul odors, or even divine punishment. No one suspected that the real danger was hiding in ordinary drinking water. As a result, people continued drawing water from contaminated rivers and wells. The more they drank, the faster the disease spread. The symptoms cholera often strikes without warning. It may begin with mild stomach discomfort. Soon afterward comes severe watery diarrhea. Then relentless vomiting begins. The body rapidly loses water. The blood becomes thicker. Blood pressure drops. The heart struggles to pump enough blood throughout the body. Without replacing the lost fluids, a patient can die from extreme dehydration in a matter of hours. This is what made cholera one of the most terrifying diseases of its time. Panic in the cities. Whenever cholera arrived in a city, everyday life changed almost overnight. Markets emptied. Schools closed their doors. Wealthy families fled to the countryside. The poor were left to face the epidemic alone. Many people became so frightened that they refused to help even their own neighbors. The streets feel strangely silent. Church bells ring almost constantly. Every day, dozens and sometimes hundreds of funerals took place. Humanity's greatest mistake. The tragedy was that people were fighting the wrong enemy. They burned fragrant herbs to cleanse the air. They lit enormous fires in the streets. They carried charms and protective amulets. They sealed their windows tightly shut. Yet the bacteria continued spreading through contaminated water. While everyone searched for danger in the air, the real threat floated silently inside wells, barrels, and rivers. Could people have protected themselves? Yes. But almost no one knew how. If communities had boiled their drinking water, avoided contaminated sources, and quickly replaced lost fluids, the death toll would have been dramatically lower. Unfortunately, these life-saving discoveries would not come until decades later. By then, cholera had already earned its place as one of the most feared diseases in human history. The 7 cholera pandemics. By the early 19th century, the world had become more connected than ever before. Trade routes stretched across continents, empires expanded their borders, and thousands of ships crossed the oceans every year. What people didn't realize was that these ships carried more than merchants and valuable cargo. They also carried one of history's deadliest diseases. The age of global cholera pandemics had begun. The first cholera pandemic. The first known cholera pandemic began in 1817 in the Ganges Delta of British India. At first, local officials believed it was just another seasonal outbreak. But within months, the disease spread far beyond its traditional boundaries. British soldiers unknowingly transported cholera to neighboring regions. Merchant ships carried infected passengers to Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Thailand, Indonesia, and parts of China. Entire towns were devastated. In some communities, so many people died that there were not enough healthy survivors to bury the dead. Although Europe escaped the first pandemic, millions of people across Asia had already witnessed the terrifying power of cholera. The second pandemic. Only a few years later, cholera returned, stronger than ever. This time, it marched toward Europe. By 1831, the disease had reached Russia. Cities reported thousands of deaths within weeks. Fear spread even faster than the infection itself. Many people refused to believe doctors. Some even claimed physicians were poisoning patients. Violent riots broke out in several cities as terrified crowds attacked hospitals. Soon, cholera crossed into Poland, Germany, France, and the United Kingdom. In 1832, it crossed the Atlantic Ocean and reached North America. Major cities such as New York and Montreal experienced deadly outbreaks. The disease had become a global threat. Fear and panic. People had no idea how cholera spread. Some blamed bad air. Others believed foreigners had brought a curse. Many families locked themselves inside their homes. Others fled the cities, unknowingly carrying the disease with them. Markets closed. Businesses collapsed. Trade slowed dramatically. Entire economies suffered because of fear alone. The third pandemic. Many historians consider the third cholera pandemic the deadliest of them all. It swept across Asia, Europe, North Africa, and North America. Hundreds of thousands died. In some cities, hospitals overflowed within days. Doctors worked around the clock, but they had no effective treatment. Patients arrived healthy in the morning and were dead before sunset. Entire families disappeared within a single week. It seemed impossible to stop. A city under siege. Imagine walking through a crowded 19th century city. The streets are strangely quiet. Shop doors remain closed. Black funeral carriages move slowly through empty roads. Church bells echo from every direction. The smell of disinfectants fills the air. Every knock on the door could bring terrible news. This was daily life during a cholera epidemic. For millions of people, fear became as deadly as the disease itself. The fourth and fifth pandemics. During the second half of the 19th century, cholera continued its deadly journey. The fourth pandemic reached parts of Africa and South America. Pilgrims, soldiers, and sailors unknowingly carried the bacterium across continents. The fifth pandemic followed soon afterward. Although scientists were beginning to understand infectious diseases, sanitation remained poor in many growing cities. Without clean water or proper sewage systems, cholera continued to find new victims. A turning point in history. By the late 19th century, a revolutionary idea began to emerge. Perhaps cholera was not spread through poisonous air after all. Perhaps the real danger was contaminated water. This simple idea would transform medicine forever. One determined physician would risk his reputation to prove it. His discovery would save countless lives and forever change public health around the world. That remarkable story begins in the next chapter. The discovery that changed everything. By the middle of the 19th century, cholera had become one of the world's greatest killers. Millions had died. Entire cities had been brought to a standstill. Yet despite decades of devastating outbreaks, no one truly understood how the disease spread. Most doctors still believed in the miasma theory, the idea that deadly diseases were carried by poisonous air rising from filth and decay. But one physician refused to accept that explanation. His name was John Snow. He would challenge one of medicine's oldest beliefs and forever change the course of public health. London, 1854. It was late August in London. The city was overcrowded, dirty, and growing faster than its infrastructure could keep up. Thousands of families shared public water pumps. Sewage flowed into the River Thames, and drinking water often came from contaminated sources. Then disaster struck. In just a few days, hundreds of people living near Broad Street fell violently ill. Entire households collapsed almost overnight. Parents watched helplessly as their children became dangerously dehydrated. Healthy adults died within hours. Panic spread through the streets. No one knew why one neighborhood had been hit so much harder than the rest of the city. A different way of thinking. Unlike many of his colleagues, John Snow did not believe poisonous air was responsible. Instead, he suspected something much more ordinary. Water. Snow began interviewing families of the victims. He carefully marked every death on a map of the neighborhood. As more information came in, a pattern became impossible to ignore. Almost every victim had obtained drinking water from the same public pump on Broad Street. The evidence was overwhelming. The disease wasn't spreading through the air. It was spreading through contaminated water. The pump handle. Snow presented his findings to local officials. At first, many remained skeptical. After all, the miasma theory had dominated medicine for generations. Still, authorities agreed to take one simple step. The handle of the Broad Street water pump was removed. Residents could no longer draw water from it. Soon afterward, the outbreak began to fade. Although some physicians remained unconvinced, history would later recognize this moment as one of the greatest breakthroughs in epidemiology. A single removed pump handle became a symbol of scientific thinking and evidence-based medicine. The hidden enemy. Years later, scientists finally identified the true culprit. The bacterium Vibrio cholerae had been living in contaminated water all along. Once swallowed, it released a powerful toxin inside the small intestine. Instead of attacking tissues directly, the toxin forced intestinal cells to pump enormous amounts of water into the digestive tract. The result was catastrophic dehydration. The body lost water faster than it could possibly replace it. This explained why patients deteriorated so rapidly. The mystery that had terrified humanity for centuries had finally been solved. Saving lives with a simple solution. One of the most remarkable discoveries about cholera was also one of the simplest. People weren't dying because of the bacteria alone. They were dying because their bodies lost too much water and salt. Replace those fluids quickly enough, and many patients could survive. This led to one of the greatest medical advances of the 20th century, oral rehydration therapy. A carefully balanced mixture of clean water, sugar, and salts allows the body to absorb fluids efficiently. Today, this inexpensive treatment has saved millions of lives around the world. Sometimes the most powerful medicine isn't a complex drug, it is simply giving the body what it desperately needs. Clean water changes civilization. The fight against cholera transformed entire cities. Governments invested in modern sewer systems. Water treatment plants were built. Filtration and chlorination became standard in many countries. Public health officials realized that preventing disease was often more effective than treating it. These improvements didn't just reduce cholera. They dramatically lowered deaths from many other infectious diseases as well. Modern sanitation became one of humanity's greatest achievements. The sixth pandemic. Despite these advances, cholera did not disappear. A sixth pandemic swept across parts of Asia, the Middle East, and North Africa during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Many poorer regions still lacked clean drinking water and adequate sanitation. Wherever safe water was unavailable, cholera continued to thrive. The disease reminded the world that scientific discoveries alone were not enough. They had to reach everyone. The fight continues. By the middle of the 20th century, many believed cholera would soon become a disease of the past. Modern medicine had advanced dramatically. Cities had cleaner water. Sewage systems had improved. Scientists understood exactly what caused the disease. It seemed humanity had finally won. But cholera had one final surprise. The seventh pandemic. In 1961, a new wave of cholera began on the Indonesian island of Sulawesi. This outbreak was caused by a different strain of Vibrio cholerae, known as the L. tor biotype. Unlike earlier strains, L. tor often caused milder symptoms, allowing infected people to travel without realizing they were carrying the bacteria. As a result, the disease spread farther and faster than before. Within years, it reached South Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and eventually Latin America. This became known as the seventh cholera pandemic, the pandemic that, unlike the previous six, has never completely ended. Even today, it continues to cause outbreaks in parts of the world. Why does cholera still exist? With all the technology available today, many people wonder why cholera has not disappeared. The answer is surprisingly simple. Cholera is not only a medical problem. It is also a problem of clean water, sanitation, and poverty. In communities without reliable access to safe drinking water, proper sewage systems, or healthcare, the bacteria can spread rapidly. Natural disasters can make the situation even worse. Floods, earthquakes, hurricanes, and armed conflicts often destroy water infrastructure, forcing people to drink contaminated water. In these conditions, cholera can return within days. Modern treatment. Fortunately, today's doctors have powerful tools to fight the disease. The most important treatment is rapid rehydration. Replacing lost water and electrolytes can save the vast majority of patients if treatment begins early. In severe cases, patients receive intravenous fluids. Antibiotics may also be used in selected cases to shorten the duration of illness and reduce bacterial shedding. There are now oral cholera vaccines that can help protect vulnerable populations, especially during outbreaks or in high-risk areas. Although no vaccine provides perfect protection, vaccination has become an important part of cholera prevention. Lessons humanity learned. The story of cholera taught humanity lessons that changed the world. Clean drinking water saves lives. Modern sewage systems are just as important as hospitals. Scientific evidence is more powerful than superstition. One person's careful observations can transform global medicine. And preventing disease is often far more effective than treating it after it begins. These lessons continue to shape public health today. Fascinating facts. Did you know that a person with severe cholera can lose more than 10 liters of fluid in a single day? Or that a simple mixture of clean water, sugar, and salts has saved millions of lives around the world? Did you know that mapping disease outbreaks, first demonstrated during the London epidemic, became one of the foundations of modern epidemiology? Even today, scientists continue monitoring cholera around the world to detect outbreaks as early as possible. A disease that changed history. Cholera influenced far more than medicine. It changed city planning. It transformed engineering. It inspired new public health laws. It encouraged governments to invest in clean water systems. It even changed the way scientists investigate disease outbreaks. Without the lessons learned from cholera, many of the public health systems we rely on today might never have developed. Final thoughts. For centuries, cholera was one of humanity's greatest fears. It traveled along rivers, crossed oceans, and reshaped nations. It claimed millions of lives before science uncovered its secrets. Today, we know how to prevent and treat it. Yet the disease reminds us that access to clean water is not a luxury, it is essential for life. As long as millions of people lack safe drinking water and adequate sanitation, cholera will remain a threat. The fight against this disease is not only about medicine. It is about equality, infrastructure, education, and ensuring that every community has access to one of humanity's most basic needs, clean water. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary and would like to explore more stories about history's deadliest diseases, forgotten pandemics, and the medical discoveries that changed the world, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss future episodes. Because history is more than a collection of dates. It is the story of humanity's greatest struggles and its greatest triumphs.